The Shatters Rehearsal was an event created with the intent of helping casual players to learn the Shatters and become more confident in running it. Unfortunately though, it failed to achieve this. In this video, I'm going to explain what the Shatters Rehearsal event was, how it failed, why it failed, and what I would do to improve it. The Shatters Rehearsal event was divided into three main components: the Shatters Rehearsal itself, the Shattered leaderboards, and random side events that were run alongside the main event. The Shatters Rehearsal had monuments spawning twice per realm for 3 weeks. During the first week, you could fight the Bridge Sentinel and clear the Derelict Village. The second week, you could fight the Twilight Archmage and clear the castle segment of the Shatters. And the third week, you could clear the Royal Gauntlet and fight the Forgotten King. These rehearsal dungeons only contained one segment of the Shatters. They had overall 15% reduced damage and 20% reduced health. They also dropped worse items. Instead of the regular Shatters items that you'd get from a regular Shatters, you got the same items, but rehearsal versions of them that had worse stats or different stats. Once you'd completed a few rehearsals, their Shattered leaderboards was a leaderboard-based event running in the main Shatters. In addition to the dungeon dropping 50% more loot for the entire event, the leaderboards had a few exclusive items, including titles, skins, and pet skins. Each boss had its own leaderboard that would run alongside each monument in the rehearsal, and top 100 in this event got an exclusive pet skin, and the top 1000 got an exclusive title. There was also a leaderboard for the overall Shatters completes, where a Bridge Sentinel was worth 1 point, an Archmage was worth 2 points, and a Forgotten King was worth 3 points. The top 1000 in this event got another exclusive title, and the top 100 got the Shattered Queen Mystic skin. Now, notably, Rehearsal Shatters did not count at all for any part of the Shattered Leaderboards event. If you wanted to progress in the Shattered Leaderboards, you had to run actual Shatters. Rehearsals wouldn't cut it. The third part of this event, which wasn't entirely related, but it did run at the same time, were random other events. There was a 50% more loot in the Lair of Draconis and the Mountain Temple. Then there was appetizers spawning in the realms. Then there was a abandoned mineshaft chest event and a toxic sewers chest event. None of these events were really well communicated at all. No one knew they were running until they started running. So this event was supposed to teach people how to do Shatters, but instead, no one really went into rehearsals in the realm for the entirety of the event, except a little bit during the Forgotten King part of the event. And so, instead of the rehearsal being the focus of the event, the Shattered leaderboards became the focus. Many people were grinding out Shatters. By the end of the event, there were almost 5,000 people who had participated to some extent, even if it was just killing one Bridge Sentinel. So since no one was running rehearsals, the casual players who wanted to learn the dungeon would enter a rehearsal dungeon, see no one was there, and leave, which is a common problem with exaltation dungeons in the realm. So rehearsals really weren't doing anything different here. So why did the Shatters rehearsals fail? Well, one of these reasons would be that the Shatters really wasn't much easier than the actual Shatters. There was only 15% less damage and 20% less health, which does mean something, but it's not going to be the difference between life or death in many situations in the dungeon. Although it could be helpful in some cases, it just wasn't really worth it for how much worse the items were, and the fact that this did not count at all for the leaderboards. The only people who would have wanted these worse items from the Shatters Rehearsal would be hardcore collectors, and these people had access to keys if they really wanted to collect them. And notably, the most sought after rehearsal item, the Rehearsal Forgotten Crown, actually was not dropping at all for the entire event. And even now, currently does not drop until the next update, when it will finally start dropping. Since there was a leaderboard-based event in the actual Shatters, any experienced players who might have tried the rehearsal Shatters just for fun to see what it's like and maybe collect a few of the items for collection's sake, they just went to regular Shatters instead because there were exclusive skins and titles to get, and there was no one there in the realm rehearsals to actually help new players out. The random events that were running alongside the rehearsals also drew the casual players away, since those were significantly easier and dropped better loot. So no one was really going to run rehearsals when they had nothing to offer except the promise of experience with the Shatters. And if no one else is entering, why should one person enter and try to solo unless they're a collector trying to get the rehearsal items, which there were not many of those. To fix this event, we have one very clear objective, and that is to get experienced players to go into the realm rehearsals so that casual players can join them and learn the dungeon easier with a proper group. If someone sees a bunch of experienced players or just other players in general entering a rehearsal, they'd be more likely to join along, so there'd be plenty of people in a Shatters rehearsal. If we wanted to encourage running rehearsals, we'd also have to remove the dungeon fees for rehearsals so that players wanting to run rehearsals would have to do them through the realm. Now, removing these is a bit of a double-edged sword, because it does mean that more people will be doing runs in the realms, but it also means they might want to PvP those runs to get weaker players to leave and make the runs overall more efficient. So a leaderboard wouldn't really work very well on rehearsal. But while we're on the topic of leaderboards, they really aren't that good for this game. They're super competitive since there's plenty of cheaters in this game that Deca really doesn't do much about. So leaderboards aren't really all that fair to begin with, especially considering most of it's just grinding, whoever has the most time to grind away at these dungeons. So what I would do to improve this event, make it actually do what it was intended to do from the beginning, is I would take the rewards from the Shattered leaderboards and make them more generous. It could still be a leaderboard event, but the top 1,000 to 2,000 would be getting the skins, and the top 3,000 to 5,000 would get the titles. Additionally, the points would only be rewarded by rehearsal dungeons, which would no longer have dungeon fees. Meaning everyone would want to go run the rehearsals in the realm to progress in the event, but not an excessive amount. Since the leaderboard is much more generous, you have plenty of leeway to just run a decent amount. It's not super competitive like it was in reality, and new players can join along, maybe even compete and get some of the titles for themselves. They'll also learn the dungeon and have a good time, I would hope. This does have one major downside, which is that the people who would be grinding for the skins might see less value in it since it's easier to get. But I think that's just a sacrifice that's going to have to be made to make this event more accessible and healthier for the game and community overall. With all these changes to the event and the leaderboards, it would be very easy for just someone to casually hop on, join a few realms, hop into some runs, and then get onto the leaderboards for the title at the very least, or if they're kinda dedicated, they can also get the skins. But the bar set for the skins is also very generous, so you wouldn't have to run all that many. It would be better for everyone overall, although some people might be frustrated that there isn't a hardcore competitive event. But like I said before, there's plenty of cheaters in this game, and I just don't think that a competitive leaderboards event is really something that you need to have in a PvE game like Realm of the Mad God. So how do you think you would change the Shatters rehearsal? Would you do things differently than I did? What did you like or dislike about how the Shatters rehearsal played out in actuality based on your stage of the game? Because obviously there's plenty of different players at different levels who would have experienced this event differently. Maybe you're an in-game player who loved running Shatters leaderboards on a raiding Discord. Or maybe you're a new player who didn't even get to participate in this. Maybe you were looking forward to it, but didn't actually get to run all that much because no one was entering rehearsals. And do you ever want to see this event come back? Because there's plenty of exclusive items here, not just the pet skins and the Shattered Queen Mystic skin and the titles, but also the rehearsal items, which, although they're bad, there are a lot of them and they're fun to collect, especially the Forgotten Crown rehearsal, which never even dropped. Now, before I end this, I do want to apologize for not uploading for a month. I was running this event, and most of my free time that I would normally spend recording, I was trying to run Shatters with people. You know how that grind is. I did end up getting all the titles, so I am very cool. Hopefully though, more uploads in the future. I do have a bunch of ideas that I've been failing to execute. But until then, this has been Cat Jones, reminding you to play hard and stay safe.